Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. This summer break had been a long, hot one. The grass had long turned brown by early August. It was also the first summer that I chose to work instead of sleeping in, mastering my Call of Duty skills or going to the lake with the guys. But I needed that car before school started, or I'd be the only senior still riding the school bus. My dad had made a deal with me. If I could save up half the down payment, he would pay the other half. Ethan's parents had bought his first car for his 16th birthday, a slightly used Toyota Camry. Tristan's parents had unveiled his brand new Mustang GT last Christmas. But my parents were more traditional.
Paying for your own car will teach you the real value of money and make you appreciate what you have,
my dad had told me. When I told him about Ethan and Tristan's parents buying their cars for them,
they're raising entitled brats who won't know how to work for anything.
The funny thing was that I knew Dad was right. I knew that even before I took the job or came home with the last $200 for my half of the down payment. I was so excited. I already knew what I wanted. There was a used car lot right next to Buster's Burgers, where I worked. They had a sweet jacked-up Toyota Tacoma that caught my eye every single day I walked to work. Forest green with oversized tires and a light bar across the top. It wasn't practical, it wasn't sensible, but man, it was exactly what a 17-year-old thought looked cool. Dad came with me that Saturday morning, his coffee mug in one hand and a skeptical look on his face, as he examined the Tacoma's undercarriage. The salesman, Jerry, was all smiles and handshakes, but Dad asked the hard questions about maintenance records and why the previous owner had sold it. An hour later, we were signing papers. As Jerry handed me the keys, Dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You earned this, son." For the first time all summer, his approval meant more to me than the truck itself. That evening, I drove the Tacoma to work for the first time, parking it right out front where everyone could see. My coworkers gathered around, admiring the lift kit and running their hands along the oversized tires. When Buster stepped out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, I held my breath. He had been more than a boss to me this summer. He had become like a mentor, always pushing me to work harder and take pride in what I was doing. "Well, I'll be damned, Nate," Buster said, walking a slow circle around the truck. "You actually did it." He grinned and gave the hood an approving pat. "You know what? You've been busting your ass all summer long. Why don't you take the weekend off? Enjoy that truck. School starts Monday anyway. Consider it your last taste of freedom." I couldn't believe it. My mind immediately went to the camping trip Ethan and Tristan had been planning for weeks up at Devil's Lake. They had been texting me about it all month, but I'd had to turn them down every time because of work. Now, with my own truck and an unexpected free weekend, I could actually go. I pulled out my phone right there in the parking lot and fired off a quick text. "Just got my new truck and the weekend off. Count me in for Devil's Lake if you still have room." By Friday afternoon, we were loaded up and heading north. Ethan rode shotgun, messing with my radio, while Tristan stretched out in the back with all our camping gear. The Tacoma handled the highway like a dream, and for the first time all summer, I felt like a normal teenager again. We stopped for gas about 20 miles from the lake at one of those combination gas stations that sells everything from live bait to lottery tickets. A park ranger was filling up his truck at the next pump over. He was older, maybe Dad's age, with weathered hands and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "You boys headed up to Devil's Lake?" he asked, nodding toward our camping gear. "Yes, sir," I replied, topping off the tank. He walked over, his expression serious. "Stick to the marked trails. We've had 3 hikers go missing this summer. Last one was just 2 weeks ago." He handed me a flyer with photos of the missing people, a couple in their 20s and a solo hiker about our age. "If you see anything unusual, anything at all, you get back to your vehicle and drive straight to town." Inside, the gas station attendant, a thin man with nervous eyes, rang up our snacks and drinks. As we headed for the door, he muttered under his breath, "Things around Devil's Lake got a way of calling to folks, making them think they hear someone needing help out there in the trees. You boys be smart. Don't go chasing voices in the dark." We climbed back into the truck, and Tristan immediately started laughing. "Dude, did you see that guy's face? Like he actually believes in Bigfoot or something." "Small town weirdos," Ethan agreed, cranking up the music. "Probably just trying to scare city kids." But as I pulled back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the image of that solo hiker's photo. He had looked exactly like he could have been one of us. The campground at Devil's Lake was eerily quiet when we arrived. For late August, I'd expected at least a few other campers, but the place was practically deserted. Only 2 other sites showed signs of recent use, and even those looked like they'd been abandoned mid-trip. Coolers left open, camping chairs still arranged around cold fire pits. "Where is everyone?" Ethan asked as we unloaded our gear. "Probably scared off by Ranger Rick and his missing hiker stories." Tristan laughed, but even he seemed to notice how our voices echoed strangely in the empty space. We set up camp near the water's edge, where the lake stretched out black and still under the gathering dusk. After we got the fire going and cooked some hot dogs, Tristan produced his secret weapon, a bottle of his dad's bourbon, stolen from the back of the liquor cabinet. "Tonight's truck, and our last weekend of freedom," he toasted, and we passed the bottle around, the whiskey burning our throats and making us brave. That's when we started trying to scare each other with stupid ghost stories and urban legends. But underneath our laughter, real sounds drifted from the tree line, low calls that could have been owls but lasted too long, and what sounded like footsteps circling just beyond the firelight. "You guys hear that?" Ethan whispered during a lull in our conversation. We all went quiet, listening. Something was definitely moving out there in the darkness, but every time we tried to pinpoint it, the sound seemed to shift, like it was deliberately staying just out of sight. "Probably just a deer," I said, but my voice cracked a little. We eventually crawled into our sleeping bags, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The first drops of rain started hitting our tent around 11, a soft pattering that quickly turned into a steady downpour. "Great," Ethan muttered from his sleeping bag. "So much for our last perfect weekend." The rain drumming on the tent roof reminded me of something, and before I could stop myself, I was talking. My Nana used to tell me this story when I was little. She'd always tell it when it rained like this. "What kind of story?" Tristan asked, his voice cutting through the darkness. "She called it, 'They Come When It Rains,' said her grandmother told it to her back in the old country." I paused, listening to the rain getting heavier. "She claimed that when the rain falls hard enough, it wakes things up, old things that had been sleeping in the deep places, and they used the sound of the rain to mask their footsteps when they come looking for, well, for people." "That's creepy as hell, man," Ethan whispered. "Yeah. Well, she said they could mimic voices perfectly, call out for help, or pretend to be someone you know. But you could tell the difference if you listened carefully. Their voices never quite matched the rhythm of the rain." Thunder rolled across the lake, and we all went quiet for a moment. Just stories, Tristan said, but his voice was smaller now. I must have dozed off sometime after midnight, because I woke to the sound of rustling. Tristan was getting up, probably heading off to pee. I heard his footsteps moving away from camp, toward the trees, barely audible over the rain. That was the last sound I heard from him. I woke up what felt like hours later, my bladder full and the rain still pounding the tent. But Tristan's sleeping bag was empty. I checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. He'd been gone for over 3 hours. "Ethan!" I whispered, shaking his shoulder. "Ethan, wake up!" "What?" he mumbled, barely opening his eyes. "Tristan's not back." "He's probably just taking a long piss, man. Go back to sleep." "Ethan, it's been over 3 hours. That got his attention. He sat up, suddenly alert, and looked over at the empty sleeping bag. "Tristan?" he called out. "Tristan!" Nothing but the sound of rain hitting the tent. We grabbed our flashlights and rain jackets, stepping out into the downpour. The campsite looked different in the darkness, smaller, more vulnerable. Our fire had died to barely glowing embers. "Tristan!" we both yelled, our voices swallowed by the storm. I swept my flashlight beam toward the trees, where I'd heard him walking. There, pressed into the muddy ground, were his boot prints leading away from the camp. We followed them to the edge of the tree line, where they suddenly stopped, not like he had turned around or stepped onto harder ground, but like he had just vanished mid-step. But that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Next to Tristan's prints were others, larger, deeper, but with an odd shape I couldn't quite make out in the mud. "Help!" The voice came from somewhere deep in the woods. "Help me!" It was Tristan's voice, no doubt about it. "Thank God," Ethan said, already moving toward the sound. "Tristan, we're coming!" But I grabbed his arm. Something was wrong. I listened to the voice calling out again, and that's when I heard it, or rather, didn't hear it. The voice wasn't matching the rhythm of the rain. It was perfectly clear, perfectly timed, like it was coming from somewhere the storm couldn't touch. "That's not him," I whispered. "Are you crazy? Of course it's him." Ethan yanked his arm free and started pushing through the wet branches toward the voice. "Tristan, keep yelling, we're coming." "Ethan, wait," I hissed. But he was already crashing through the underbrush, his flashlight beam dancing wildly ahead of him. The voice called out again, closer now. "Over here. I'm hurt." Every instinct in my body was screaming that this was wrong. The voice was too perfect, too clear, like it was being projected rather than shouted by someone lost and scared in the woods. And it kept moving, first from the left, then straight ahead, then off to the right, always just far enough away to keep us following. I had no choice but to go after Ethan. The last thing I wanted was to lose both my friends to whatever was out there in the darkness. I plunged into the trees, branches whipping at my face, calling Ethan's name as quietly as I dared. "Ethan, stop! Listen to me!" But ahead of me, I could hear him crashing through the forest, chasing after that voice that sounded exactly like Tristan, but felt nothing like him at all. I finally caught up to Ethan in a small clearing about 50 yards from camp. He was standing frozen, his flashlight beam fixed on something at the base of a massive oak. Tristan's clothes were scattered across the ground, his shirt hanging from a low branch, like he had been pulled right out of it. His jeans crumpled in the mud, one boot lying on its side. "What the hell?" Ethan whispered. The voice had stopped calling. The woods around us had gone completely silent, except for the rain. "We need to go," I said, grabbing Ethan's arm. "Right now. We can't just leave him." "Look around, Ethan. Look at his clothes. Something took him, and it's still out here." That's when we heard it. Not Tristan's voice this time, but Ethan's own voice calling from somewhere behind us. "Nate? Nate, where are you? I'm lost." Ethan's face went white. We both knew he was standing right next to me. "We go back to the truck," I whispered. "We drive to town and get help. That's the only way." We ran. Branches tore at our clothes and faces as we crashed back toward the campsite. Multiple voices now calling after us. Tristan asking why we were leaving him. Ethan begging for help. And something that might have been the missing hikers from the Ranger's flyer. We threw our sleeping bags and gear into the truck bed without bothering to break down the tent. As I fumbled with the keys, something that looked exactly like Tristan stepped out of the tree line. "Guys, what's wrong? Why are you leaving?" it asked, with perfect concern in its voice, but its eyes reflected my headlights like an animal's. I gunned the engine, but instead of shooting forward, the Tacoma lurched and the wheels spun uselessly. The rain had turned the campground exit into a muddy bog, and my brand new truck was stuck fast. "Come on, come on!" I slammed it into reverse, then drive again, the engine whining as the tires found no purchase. The Tristan thing was walking toward us now, its movement wrong, kind of fluid but also kind of jerky, like it was floating and tripping just above the ground. Behind it, two other figures emerged from the woods. In the headlight glare, I could see they were completely naked, pale and glistening with rain, moving with that same unnatural gait. "Four-wheel drive!" Ethan whispered desperately. "Hit the four-wheel drive!" My hands were shaking as I found the four-wheel drive lever. The thing wearing Tristan's face was only 20 feet away now, and I could see that beneath the familiar features, something else was moving, like there was something crawling around underneath his skin. I engaged the four-wheel drive just as the creature broke into a run. Not a human run, but a loping, animalistic charge on all fours, despite looking exactly like our friend. The truck lurched forward, tires finally gripping but not fast enough. The Tristan thing launched itself onto the hood with inhuman strength, its naked body slamming against the windshield. Up close, I could see that Tristan's face was like a mask, stretched over something with teeth like an animal. It pressed its palms against the glass and opened its mouth impossibly wide and let out a shriek that sounded nothing like any earthly animal. I floored it, swerving hard to the left. The creature lost its grip and tumbled off the hood, rolling into the mud. In the rearview mirror, I saw it spring back to its feet immediately, watching us disappear into the night, along with the other two figures that had been closing in on the truck. The drive back to town was silent, except for Ethan's quiet crying. At the sheriff's station, they listened to our story with barely concealed skepticism. Search and rescue went out at dawn, but they only found what was left of our campsite and a few of Tristan's scattered clothes. No body, no blood, no sign of a struggle. Boys probably just had too much to drink and their friend wandered off. I heard one deputy say, "He'll turn up." But Tristan never turned up. Neither did Ethan. who disappeared from his bedroom window 3 nights later, while his parents slept downstairs. Now I drive past the community center every day on my way to school, and there they are, new missing person flyers taped to the bulletin board. Tristan's senior picture smiling down at me. Ethan's too. The official story is another hiker who goes missing by Devil's Lake, probably wandered off intoxicated and got lost in the woods. Some think Ethan left because he did something to Tristan and was consumed by guilt. The case is still open. Only I know the truth. And sometimes, when it rains hard enough, I swear I can hear them calling my name from the storm drains and the spaces between houses, their voices perfectly matching the rhythm of the rain, inviting me to come find them. But I remember what Nana used to say, and I know better than to listen. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's Crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's Crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.